It's been a wonderful reception here. Thanks also to everybody here in South Africa. Sunu's been here once or twice, but I've never been here. It's a fantastic place. We have lots of, not a lot, but we have a fair amount of South African people in our team in Delhi. So we're quite sort of South African in our own way. We even learned a traditional greeting, which they taught us. What's up, boot? Sweet. There you go. We got more.
Also, thanks Jupiter for sending two really fantastic people actually.
Yeah, so if anybody's here from Jupiter, then hi guys. The guys are saying hi back from Delhi. So just want to kick off by saying it's really intimidating being up here after the kind of stuff we've seen. Noreen was just sort of popping by and we said thanks a lot. You know, you've sort of jacked up the pressure massively. And having so much established and emerging talent sitting right here. We're agency guys, so when you see this kind of intense sort of design crowd gathered in one place, we're worried about seeming a bit sort of dull and academic at points. So forgive us if we are. And just to start with that, what we're going to try and do for you today is rather than just show you our work, which we will, because again we're agency guys. But what we're going to try and do is give you an insight into India. So we want you to kind of take away what we think, and we may be completely wrong, but what we think is probably the key issue right now in India, and what could possibly come in the way of creativity helping make things better. So that's kind of what we're going to do. So forgive us if it's a little dry when we build up the case. We're going to bitch and moan a little bit because it's a habit.
Like all good creative people.
Like all good creative people, and then tell you what we're trying to do about it. So this is who we are. There's our crest, Wieden+Kennedy. We're very proud of the fact that we are completely independent. We have 7 very interesting offices, right from Tokyo, Shanghai, Amsterdam. There's us. We get to work on some iconic brands, and we've done some great campaigns. We're very lucky, we think, to be part of this family. The motto there is not a throwaway. The work comes first. We believe in it. We live it. We leave most conference rooms with blood on the floor, and it's usually ours, unfortunately. But we think it's worth the struggle. Our story, as the introduction rightly said, we had a company before this. We merged with Wieden+Kennedy in October 2007 when they entered because of Nokia and the global win. It was a very natural progression because we'd worked on Nokia since 2004. And when we met W+K, they were just like us, but much bigger.
So we were kind of helping them set up in Delhi and kind of fell in love and got married, kind of thing.
Yeah. Not quite, but anyway. Sit down. So we're a small company. We're 30 strong. In fact, it kind of fluctuates. We're trying not to go beyond 50 or 60. There's some kind of magic figure over which we get stale. We are intensely multicultural, which we think is a massive differentiator in the Indian market. We want people to come in and kind of cross-pollinate ideas because we think that's the only way that it's really going to change. The question, can creativity help make a better India? We think yes, it definitely can. I mean, there are massive problems in India, but this can be, even if it can make 5% or 4% or 3% of a difference, the scale of change is going to be massive because the scale of the problem is massive. We'll just quickly zip through what we've been looking at. So we're sitting there in Delhi and kind of looking across at the west and the east and saying, what's been happening there? And there we see this actually very heartening what's been happening. I mean, it began a while ago. The kind of movement which kind of put people like us in the doghouse and said, these chaps don't really work for a living. Fair enough. More and more of this happened. Now you can find these DVDs, for example, in every little store in Delhi in Hindi. So the awareness is spilling over. You came to a point where, we've told the story in Time magazine covers because that tells you how mainstream the points have become. Empowerment of the consumer is, we think, complete and frightening for an advertising or marketing person. When Radiohead said, pay what you like for the song, that for us was pretty much the end of how we used to work, which was just, have a couple of gins in the morning and then go for a meeting and go home and stay. The good old days. Clients of ours like Nike globally are also aware of this. They're pushing advertising dollars into services and trying to sort of, add true value. I think it's much more authentic in what they're trying to do for consumers. You've got mega stars who are turning completely to this whole creative capitalism thing, which we think is a very interesting future for India. You've got the current crisis where people, instead of just thinking these guys had a plan and they messed it up because it's some external force, everybody sort of realized that people were having a party, indeed, as the cover says, and it's just none of it has been what it seemed to be. So there's an intense kind of revelation. This, of course, is the most visible sign of change. Oh, cool. And even China, again, we are sort of peering over into China all the time and saying, how come they're so cool and we're sort of still lagging behind? When they unfortunately had that earthquake recently, the one thing we noticed in India was their collective sense of being, and it was very powerful, and we were kind of quite envious of that, because as the presentation will show you, that's one of our problems. This is the issue, and as creative people, we think that there is a role. We've got two Indias. I know it's a big cliche, but it's a frightening difference. India, one, is still growing in recession at about 7%. It's a thriving democracy, and it's got this kind of almost mythical middle class, which is bigger than most countries. We sit in many presentations and discuss them. We're not sure if it's entirely true, but it's big. And then you've got India too, which is not doing so well, and there doesn't seem to be any chance of it doing better. It's just getting worse and worse. So the rift is getting very strong. The state, we think, has largely failed in many ways. Now, the middle class is typically what drives this change. I mean, historically, everywhere in Britain and America, this is actually an Economist special report which came out, I think, last week. And they talked about how, consolidating democracy, even prosperity, is something that middle classes have achieved. Frighteningly, the World Bank is pinning its hopes on the emerging markets middle classes, including India, as a sort of driver of recovery. So that means there's a lot riding on them. So prosperity, democracy, social justice, usually these come from a middle class. Now what's actually a bit scary is that in India, the middle class don't behave like all these middle classes have behaved. And the moment people become middle class in India, they behave like the elite, which is actually sort of bang on here. They say, all right, I'm sorted, I've arrived, so the hell with it. And they stop sort of worrying about social justice and civic sense and all those things. It's a massive generalization, but when you look at the evidence, this is pretty much what's underpinning it. So problem number one, and something that kind of colors all the work and is the context we live in, is the Indian middle class. So given what we've talked about so far, you'd think, damn, you guys should just shut shop and sort of lie under the bed and wait for the end. But it's not so bad. I mean, what we're looking at right now is that the middle class, we've come from a country where we had a strong sense of interconnected destiny. But right now, it's an intensely selfish sort of milieu that we live in. It all began in India. We don't want to sound boastful, but the whole interconnected thing sort of was very much part of our ethos. It still is. Right up to independence, where you had Gandhi. I don't need to say much about that, but Nehru, who's sitting with him and went on to become prime minister, was kind of the founder of a dynasty, a political dynasty, which, we don't want to play a blame game, but they pretty much began this kind of elitist control of India and broke the back largely of, any sense of civic duty by just being terribly elitist and centralized. What this has left us with is the great Indian level crossing dilemma. Now this, whenever you're in India, you must go to a level crossing outside Delhi, because you'll see a fascinating...
It's a new kind of tourism now.
Yeah, it's level crossing tourism. Well, what happens is you drive up both sides, and instead of staying in your left lane and those guys staying in your right lane waiting for the train to pass, so you can all just carry on that way, the moment everybody comes to the barrier, everybody drives up to it. Rich, poor, doesn't matter. Everybody, including us sometimes, Sunu in fact, we just drive right up to the barrier and look at the other guy. Barriers go up after the train's gone, and boom, jam. It's one of those. It's fascinating actually. It just we don't know why. We've tried to examine it. One of the reasons is that we're a very fragmented society. I come from way up north in the hills. Sunil comes from Kerala, which is way down south. We don't speak the same language at home. We've got all sorts of divisions in our society.
They got no culture. We have culture.
I think you'll find that all the gods live in... So anyway, we say that for later. And we're all fighting for resources. They're scarce. And the state, and this is probably the worst point, failed. So if you're at a level crossing and just trying to get across, it's because you don't believe that some kind of kindly or unkindly policeman will come along and restore order. It's anarchy. So maybe that's what's driving the behavior. People can't be blamed for it per se. We are seeing change though, and this is the good bit. This is from the Times of India, which is a leading newspaper sort of in India. They're quite profit-driven normally, but we've seen initiatives come from them now, encouraging people to teach and get involved. Bollywood, about whom we don't have too many nice things to say, as you'll see during the course of this presentation, have kind of also shown that there's activism that's possible. This is Amir Khan, a famous Bollywood actor, who pursues massively activist agendas. This one is about sort of anti-corruption, anti-establishment. It's A Generation Awakens, is sort of the Rang De Basanti film. He's made a series of films like this. So there's hope. Worryingly, the recent, if all of you are aware, the recent terror attacks in Bombay, what they actually did, there was a positive outcome. It was similar to the earthquake in China, which is there was a collective sense of being temporarily. People kind of popped up and had this moment of introspection and said, why are we like this? We created a website just to experiment, and it was kind of the point of it was, I'm an idiot, because instead of blaming other people and saying, oh, Pakistan did it and it's the CIA or somebody else, we said it's us. We created this situation, so we shouldn't be surprised by it. What we had within a couple of days, and it kind of frightened us and we've had to kind of shut this down, is a massive outpouring of reaction. The numbers have just started sort of going up with people saying, yes, I am an idiot. I shouldn't have let this happen. And we started seeing some very scary confessions, so we started kind of toning that down. But it shows you that there's a real reason to hope. Our brands and wishes, this is what actually impacts our work. This is done by a sort of competitor agency, and it's a mobile network. Brands are beginning to get activist. Right now, it's still fairly superficial, and it's still kind of marketing driven, but they're trying to instill messages of sort of democracy and activism and involvement. And we think that's a great sign, because that shows you how creativity can change massively, can change a situation massively. It's more interesting is how physical change can happen. Now, this is, for you, it's very routine to see a sort of cafe, or a coffee bar. In India, a tea drinking nation, all the marketing folks said, you're never going to get away with these kind of things. We drink tea. And people had nowhere to go. People had not much to do. And the guys who created this brand came and said, no, we think what it's going to do is people are going to like drinking coffee because it's new, and they're going to have a place to go and socialize. Because in Delhi, for example, you mostly hang around with your sisters at home.
But
he means me, and I don't. So now what happens now is that college people have somewhere to go, and it created a kind of social moment for them, and it's been a massive success. Straight case of brand and experience, boom, creating a new social kind of really a space which didn't exist before. Very, very encouraging and entirely possible. This is a bizarre new thing, but it's encouraging. This is the Professionals Party of India, and it's people like us who've been told, you've got to join, you've got to get involved. We'll elect our own people, because regular corrupt politicians are all corrupt and kind of feudal. And very interestingly, they're saying our target audience is the middle class, and we're going to use modern communication to fix the rest of the problem. So this is probably a party that you're going to see highly active in the next few years. But it tells you where it can go. So the Indian middle class, they're absolutely ready for change. And brands can inspire and enable this change, which we think is very, very exciting. This is the role for creativity. And in India, it's exciting because I think in 3 months, you can have an impact. And the numbers are astonishing. You do something sort of interesting, you can just take it out there, and people start buying or getting involved. And the energy is incredible, actually. So inspiring and enabling is what we think creative agencies, creative people right now can help do. We need to shape this kind of new identity, which is inclusive. It's a brand new thing, so it's not caste, language, economic sort of strata. It's about this new Indian sort of cohesive identity. What it is, we don't know. And help improve the quality of life, urban and rural. Now here's the problem. The establishment in India, as we said, are quite happy with the way things are. Again, it's a massive generalization, because a lot of marketers, especially our clients, who we love, are all very progressive. But by and large, they aren't ready. And this is something which I think we struggle with every day, really.
Yeah, every meeting.
Yeah, every meeting, yeah. The Indian corporate class is right now an obstacle. Now, it's not surprising because we picked this up from the Guardian Weekly, a couple of weeks back, and they said the whole financial meltdown was because the guys building these financial derivatives and all these kind of very abstract financial instruments were detached from what their actual social impact was. And we think that's kind of the disease that marketers have as well, which is they're building abstract theoretical situations which are far removed from what society really needs. This is a very interesting article from a couple of years ago, and this was a shocking thing that happened where India Shining was what the guys who think India is great called India, and they think it's a growth story. And this journalist who's very respected talked about 1 week which had the Delhi Fashion Week, I think. In that week, all the journalists in India were at Delhi Fashion Week, which is not spectacular in itself right now, it's still fledgling. And in that same week, 400 farmers killed themselves in a state in India because they just ran out of cash. What this journalist was saying was it's a massive measure of our disconnect. I mean, it's very real. This was last Sunday's front page of one of India's biggest papers. Rolls-Royce's new car in Mumbai is headline news, which tells you how off the focus is. And the supplement, meanwhile, talks about why women are obsessed with insanely expensive luxury handbags. So, no, that should be the headline. That is more interesting. A topical point, Slumdog Millionaire. Now, it's been, sort of well received all over the world. But if you look at how our establishment received it, they were bitching and moaning about it and saying...
This has been a real kind of a slap on Bollywood's face. They've been doing this cheesy, song and dance and, making people laugh kind of thing to really kind of thinking film. And they're not able to take it,
Yeah, and now they're getting kind of rah-rah about it. But the frightening thing is they missed the point of the film, which is it actually came from a book which was written, in fact, by India's Deputy High Commissioner to South Africa. And the book was inspired by an experiment called Hole in the Wall, where they put computers in holes in the wall in slums. And they found that in 24 hours, all the kids in the slum mastered it and were downloading games and doing all sorts of wild stuff on it. And that was the story of Slumdog, but that's where it came from.
But I think most people missed that point, actually.
Well, certainly Mr. Bachchan, who's our biggest kind of superstar, he was like, this is poverty. It's not about poverty porn. It was about how capable we are at our grassroots, at our lowest sort of social kind of segments, economic segments. And it was a great story, but the establishment somewhere doesn't want to know. They want to know about that expensive Rolls Royce on sale in Mumbai. It's a distortion. So, Indian marketers, we hereby accuse them of being disconnected. They live in this kind of ivory tower. The scary thing is that as a class, they've fallen victim to their own brand strategies. Yeah. So, if someone sells a platinum card... and
they actually believe platinum card can then, get them, I don't know what all.
Yeah, they believe the hype. So, they're kind of trapped in this little prison of their own making. And we include ourselves in it. We've grown up in that system. We've contributed. You should see some of the campaigns.
3 platinum cards.
Yeah. I don't believe me. Not on camera, bro. And the result of this is that they're stuck in this funny middle space. Now they're controlling millions and millions and millions of dollars that can go out there and color perceptions. But these guys are also sitting there in this place where they're kind of detached from all the stuff that's happening on the street. So on the street, there's all sorts of great stuff bubbling under. As
they pretty much use them as kind of subjects. Like if you have to sell a phone to kind of farmer or sell a car to someone, it's all used as a kind of research thing. But if you really look at it, they got serious culture in terms of food, kind of music they're doing. There are a lot of new DJs coming up from underground, and so they look down and laugh at them, but when it comes to where actual action is, they're really not invited. So they're kind of stuck in the middle in this kind of glass room and not able to figure out what's going on. So that's why you keep seeing a lot of this kind of what they call aspirational work, which is some word I think we kind of hate.
Yeah. So there they are, stuck in the middle, looking down at these people, looking up at these people and not being invited at the top strata where changes are happening. And that's creating difficulties for us, actually. So we call this the new red tape. Red tape, for those of you who don't know it, is bureaucracy. And it used to be what we were known for in India. But the corporate class is the new red tape. The reason why they are so resistant to change is because they're doing really well. We can talk about campaigns not being like this or like that. But when we go into a meeting, they say, we don't really care. Just get the product out there, put a logo on it, and we're going to sell millions of them. So there's not much you can say to that. Then they don't really want to debate it after that. So if we're going to make an impact, what we think is we need to break this distortion, connect marketing with reality. It's something, that's the blood on the conference floor. That's why it happens. Those are all our debates, really. And we want to add meaning to marketing. I know it sounds a little lofty and philosophical. You're thinking, come on, you're just advertising guys. But since we've got these channels, we can add meaning to them for all it's worth. If people pick it up, great. If they don't, there you are. So now we're going to talk about a little bit about our sort of work and just show you how we've tried in our own way to make that happen and to inspire and enable sort of change. We'll start with Incredible India because Sunil is the mother or father of Sunil and a senior Indian bureaucrat are the parents of this brand, so it's something very close to us. We worked with it a lot. And the problem for us on Incredible India was that it was infrastructure had been overhauled, things were in place, but the people who were selling the brand were bodies like this, which is a kind of semi-governmental body called the Confederation of Indian Industry. Now they're great at seminars on valves and things like that, but when it comes to actually projecting a brand, they're not really the best guys for the job. So we kind of stepped in, and our first stage was to distill the brand down to something which was instantly visually recognizable and became a sort of visual branding device. We went sort of step by step, year by year.
But here the interesting thing was the guy who was running it from the government side, this guy called Amitabh Kant. He was a man of like serious drive. He used to work like 24 hours a day, and he would never kind of sleep till we got everything right. It was kind of really, what do you call it, like encouraging sign, and we also never approached it like a government campaign. So I think that was kind of a kickstart. Now based on this, a lot of people are now doing better government work, like they're doing better creative work. They want to work with, kind of partner with better creative people and, better music people, better whatever it is. Like they're just kind of learning now how to partner from outside rather than working with government. And this was a kind of case study for them. So we're kind of proud of this.
So it began with the whole exclamation mark device. So
there's a series of ads. We're just showing just one or two in the interest of time, actually.
Yeah.
So first year we kind of established this I or exclamation, and I think there was 16% growth in the incoming tourists that year. But year before, hotels were kind of shutting down, and they were like 50% occupancy. So it was a big change for especially the business community. They really kind of loved this campaign just for the kind of smartness of it, I think.
Yeah. In the next year, we started selling specific bits of tourism, the spiritual tourism, wellness tourism. So this campaign, you can see how it sort of started evolving. And before this, there wasn't really a plan. So, this was very encouraging to us. I think we were getting the kind of leeway we needed. This is about Ayurveda, the ancient science of kind of healing from Kerala, where he comes from. That's the culture he was referring to.
My house is next to that, actually.
All right.
Not joking.
Then came a new shift, and this was something we put up outside the UN General Assembly, which is, it looks like an ad, a travel ad, but for the first time, India began to get a tone of voice, and we very deliberately put a slightly assertive and confident thing. Because until now, all the Come to India ads were kind of sort of, bowing Maharajas and saying, please come this way. And we were like, well, it's not quite that. You can get bitten sometimes by things. But it was for us a very sort of meaningful second layer. And all the Indian sort of bureaucrats and the ministry people were quite happy. Again, when we treated philosophy and things like that, we said, let's... It's true. There is rebirth.
This happens. Because there's no safety standards for these things.
Yeah, that's true. And even when we treated that kind of Indian cliche, the Taj Mahal, it was making a point saying, so what do you guys have? We've got the Taj Mahal, and it's quite big, white, and shiny, and there you are. We then went to a color campaign. That was the next phase. But again here, it's not just about a spectrum of colors and sort of prettiness. When we talked about these things, we were also using them in massive economic summits and stuff, and talking about our scorching sort of economic growth. So there's a bit of edge to all the messages that we sort of designed for them. This, and we'll touch upon it later, is a very strong message about color, because it's something that in India is a massive issue. It's us not being comfortable in our own skin. So very deliberately sort of crafted. This the government didn't spot, but we released it anyway. It's to do with, they thought it was the Green Revolution, but we were talking about the other one. This is the logical evolution of the campaign. This is
actually this year's campaign, where we said now we should actually stop doing this, cliche colors and like beautiful looking campaign, and actually talk about people who came to India as tourists and never went back. Especially time like this, it's a correct message to kind of give out. So we have a list of maybe like 10 people who are not just living there, but doing really interesting things. Either teaching Indian art forms or, running some beautiful boutique restaurants or hotels. But all these people, they are real people. They've been there for the last 20 years or some of them 10 years. But they all came as tourists and never went back. So maybe some of you should just
yes, think about it. We also went to each, earlier the government used to have a campaign and they used to just release it everywhere with translations. We started, this was at the Cannes Film Festival, so it says location for hire. And we just went out to all these markets and crafted messages specifically for them, which was, from an academic point of view, it was a complete shift, I think, in their strategy. This was in London, when there was a big London festival, and we were trying to tell people in England that, if you think...
We had a whole series of, I think, 12 ads or something,
So I think people felt quite bitter when they saw the sunnier Oxford Circus.
Yeah.
In Berlin, we had, in the busiest places, and we were telling commuters that the big Indian message has always been breathe in and breathe out, and everything else will sort of take care of itself.
Actually, this I think we ran everywhere. Times Square, wherever there's this kind of massive traffic jam, we had this
it's our,
breathe in, breathe out.
It's our message to the world. In New York, Sunil went and parked there for a couple of weeks, and we curated a massive festival where we took food, dance, you name it, every aspect of Indian culture, sort of academic debate.
Yeah, this is actually an interesting project where we had everyone, like all the airline companies or the hotels, restaurants. They sent in their people. We had like 60 top chefs flying down with us to do this thing for 1 week, and it was beautifully kind of creative directed. And it was a hugely successful show. And I think we just had 1 or 2 ads in Times Square. Apart from that, it's all real experiences of cultural things, of whatever it is from India.
So here we got addicted to media partnerships, which we hadn't done as an agency before. Yeah. We realized that if you've got great content in India, you'll get people from media channels, magazines, and all kinds of people just coming in and actually paying you to cover it, which is quite exciting. Our next brand, Royal Enfield, most of you probably don't know it, but it's one of the oldest motorcycle brands in the world. We love this like it's our own company. Here, the problem was, again, that same culprit, Bollywood and Bollywoodization of things. That's a big hit film called Dhoom. That's how people see motorcycling, and it really bugs us, because they take something perfectly enjoyable and sort of authentic, and they... Oh, you know what they do. So it upsets us. And agencies panic and they follow suit, and you've got wheelies and, sort of women standing next to motorbikes, and all the possible disgusting cliches of the world are there. So this bike, because it's so beautiful, and you'll see it's a classic design, it's unchanged since the Second World War, we realized that we don't have to do much to it. We just have to say, this is not a product, this is a philosophy and a way of life. And we positioned it as what we called a trip. Now, this is a real image sent in just by somebody to us saying, oh, you're the agency that handles it, here's a nice shot. But it tells you everything. This is what people could do instead of just sitting at home watching TV, which Delhi and Bombay that's the kind of most adventurous thing people do in a day, is probably change the channel. We said that this is what you could probably sort of do. And then we took this kind of authentic imagery, we removed ourselves as an agency, and we just took content and real people, and just shot them or put them on the website, which is huge. It's got a 50,000 strong community, and said, this is the character of this brand. It's real. You can be part of it, and it's a way of life. So the trip campaign was very successful.
It's all real people and their stories actually. And in fact, this guy we were shooting some other film.
Yeah.
This guy just turned up. We just stopped there and shot. And this is the most iconic ads.
A cameraman in Bombay, netball champion in Goa. If you notice, unlike those wheelie kind of Bollywoodish executions, we don't touch the images at all. And we find we get such a positive response because of that, because people know they're being marketed to and they don't like it. So it's worked really well for us. But national football coach, again, just found him, shot him. That's his bike, it's beautiful, it's customized. We work on community building, so it's also a physical trip. It's not just a mental trip. Again, real, just shots on the rides. We keep working with the community to see what we can sort of, create for them. These are not real. Yeah. So also, it's one of the most famous Royal Enfield strips. This is from one of our creative directors who I think has a bit of a smoking habit. So he came up with this.
I think he saw something like this on the trip to Himalayas.
He thinking. This is where trip can go. This is where we've kind of touched on social issues in India. This is a bike targeted at college goers. And the thing about Indian lads is they don't leave. They just say, I love my parents and I'm not going to leave. And we just said, you got the bike now, go. And what happened was...
His cousin who is, I think, 45, still living with his mother, and he hates his campaign. So we got a lot of hate mails, but also the product is sold out. I mean, this is a slightly lighter bike meant for younger kids,
We got one addressed to us saying, you have sickened me with your destruction.
How can you leave your parents, how can...
We're like, sorry, I'm just... So, I mean, this is how we approach it. We also work heavily with the brand experience. We put giant trip maps up in their showrooms, which actually are full of information, because again, there aren't great guides to where you can motorcycle without getting, held up by people and stuff like that. So we work very deeply with them, but we also do ads. So we've got one for you just to reassure you in case you think, we're an agency that's kind of lost the plot. This ad, again, for the Enfield purists, it ran in cinemas and it was, the screen would go dark.
Yeah, this was done actually on Dolby 5.1.
Yeah.
So you might not get the round effect here, but you'll get the idea.
It was an inside joke, and a lot of people would start nudging their the sort of partners, going, "Oh, I know what this is. Here you go." They sound quite good, I think, these. So you're going to be a bit of a... Okay, another booming sector in India, another set of problems. We work with an airline very closely. Again, very involved with them for, I think, 4 years now, 1 year before their launch. And when we came to the airline sector, again, that strange Indian marketing phenomenon happened. This is the kind of advertising that's going on currently, where they're all excited about each other's work. So the first airline, which is a very good airline, said, we've changed. Next guy says, we made them change. The other one said, we've not changed, we're smart. And we were just thinking, who cares? Which one of you did what? And these things used to kind of irritate us. As you can see, a lot of things do. This was an airline we expected a lot of. It was India's first low-cost carrier. Now, for us, India needs these kind of things. It's just the right business model for many reasons. And this is run by an ex-pilot, built for all the right reasons. But where we were disappointed was, they said, we're a cheap airline, so we're going to treat you cheap. And this guy, you see, this old person is a cartoon
symbol for
famous.
Indian common man, actually.
Yeah, so
they actually put it on the plane. So if you have forgotten that you're a common man, they kind of remind you.
You're like, so you'd see passengers shuffling to the plane and go, I'm a common man. So that bugged us. And funnily enough, it's not just about positioning. What happened was this airline finally folded and has merged into an airline which stands for exactly the opposite, which is a kind of a beer tycoon's airline, a brand called Kingfisher. And it's a flashy 5-star, not a great business model. It loses a lot of money, but it's kind of lost its way. We are fortunate that we worked with an airline called Indigo, and a very, very, very switched-on set of people. Sunil spent, I think, a long time at Airbus, specking out the loos and lights and the seats. We were deeply involved with the product. And what we actually wanted was to give people a much smoother, a much sort of happier experience at the same fare as Air Deccan and the other cheap carriers. We aren't like JetBlue. We don't have the money to build, interesting gizmos or put, Dunkin' Donuts on board. But we took whatever we had and tried to make it perfect. So the experience design and the advertising kind of reflects a lot of creative energy. I mean, having Trash Bollywood, we also ask people sort of to go there. We try to give them a reason to fly, perk up the whole experience. That's Goa, you must go. Brand experience, we touched every point and saw either we tried to put what we thought were funny messages on it, or we tried to redesign things so they'd work better.
So this fragile sticker, people kind of want to buy it now.
Yeah. Revenue model. And where processes didn't work, we actually got involved with the client to redesign them, like check-ins and stuff like that. Lucky again to be involved at that level. We got a little obsessed with in-flight food because people were grumbling about how you had to pay for food. So we got into what kind of food, how it's packaged. These are the first reusable cookie tins in civil aviation. It's the first, please. There was no in-flight reading material, so we started packing entertainment onto the sandwiches, so you could read your own sandwich, and we saw a lot of people do.
Yeah, people really read after eating a sandwich. Yeah.
Easy to digest stories. This is for a croissant, and we found when we created this croissant to put on the plane, a lot of people didn't know how to say croissant. They were like, in Punjabi, it's like croissant, it was getting mangled. So we put it in lots of different Hindi languages, in Hindi and other
Every
languages.
Language, actually, there's only 3 of them, actually.
The French sound funny, but this is how you can say it if you want. We're also getting a little fancy with low-cost canapes. So it's become actually, apart from a great creative sort of point of differentiation, it's become a very strong revenue earner for the airline. So experience design, I think we believe in it heavily. One of our clients in India and the US, Target, stands for that. And we are heavily influenced by this whole cheap chic, expect more, pay less thing. We think in India, it's the only way. This is a samosa, which is a bit of street food.
Street food, yeah.
So it's actually a state-of-the-art piece of packaging because it looks street from the outside, but it's grease-proof from the inside. So another first.
This is how they sell on the street, actually.
Yeah.
Like on the paper packet.
And finally, because there was no in-flight magazine and they said we're a low-fare carrier, we don't want to invest in this, we created a new company with them and said, we'll put together a magazine, you share ad revenues with us, and you distribute it. So it also became actually a platform on which we could break out of just being a kind of client agency model and become a partner, a true partner. So you wouldn't have to sell work to them, you make money together. And this magazine, it's got light stuff in it, it's got serious issues, it's also got writing by some of the upcoming stars. What's happened is because it's a good piece of work. Sorry?
Running short of time.
Okay, sorry. I got to speed up. Result is Indigo actually is doing very well at a time where other airlines are getting sort of battered around. P&G, and I want to speak really fast. This was the problem we found, and we told P&G, the other guys are doing creams which lighten your skin, which we find abhorrent as an issue. We said, we've got to react to this. We've got these kind of European standards of beauty in a country where we're not European. So we actually commissioned artists in the South to reinterpret beauty the way it was meant to be, Indian. This is the Beautify campaign, and the client was having puppies thinking of how we're going to put the product in there. But it worked very beautifully because it just flows. Little surreal, but it's for us, a meaningful change, and we're happy that P&G sort of backed it. Nokia, finally. We love this client. They're actually, in their own way, trying to change things, and they have actually the capability to create massive change. Their problem was that they were not being able to connect with everybody in one tone, and it was worrying them. They said, we don't want to lose our upmarket air. We want to talk rural. We want to talk a bit of Bollywood. So we created a campaign for them, and this is before we merged, which was the Made for India campaign.
They had a campaign which had come from, I think, Singapore or somewhere. They used to get this kind of flat, plain campaign, and the CEO that time used to get damn pissed off. He didn't know what to do, and it was his idea to do something for India, which made it look like as if someone is sitting there and thinking to make a phone for India, And I think it was him, we should get the credit for this campaign, because this campaign sold 8,000 phones a day,
Yeah.
which is, I think, kind of a record in the cell phone thing ever.
Yeah. Delhi looks like that, for those who haven't been. We'll play you a film as well. As I said, we're in the last 2 or 3, but I don't know how much time we have, but we've just got a couple. The film's in Hindi, so most of you won't, a large amount of you won't understand it, but essentially it's just to give you the kind of texture of how we cross that, connecting both the CEO and his driver, in one shot. The story basically is a trucker and his sidekick driving around India, and they can't find the phone. It's hanging on the truck where you hang good luck charms. So just so you get a flavor.
Oh, chalo hai. ओ बड़ी देर हो गई यार, फोन नहीं आया। सिग्नल वीक है जी। और सिग्नल वीक है। क्या ढूंढ रहा है? ओए मोबाइल ला। इसमें टॉर्च क्यों है? रात को भी चलता है।
Nokia 1100, made for India.
We'll skip the next one because we're running out of time. And we'll come to the last one, which is, I think
Go back.
Are we allowed to? I'm not sure if we're...
I think, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
oh, well, cool. So this was, thanks very much. This was another case where I think Sunil had to really fight. We got briefed on a gaming film. It was an Engage phone, which you
This product was kind of failing everywhere,
Yeah.
and I think this was the last try. They thought, let's just sell it in India and finish it off, that kind of thing. so here we were fighting this serious kind of cheesy, gaming world, because we said, this phone doesn't have that kind of rich gaming content, so we need to make something more kind of fun and more believable. So I think that's the kind of thing we try to achieve here.
Yeah, the sort of the popular belief was set it in some Singapore kind of land which is clean. And Sunil had a big battle saying, we're going to shoot it in Bombay and that's how it's going to be. And we did. And it went on to run across the world as is, because kids loved this new Indian kind of funny look. And then, last two films, going to make it quick. This was a GPS-enabled phone, which Nokia launched last year.
Last year.
Again, there were two things that came out of this, which is why we put it here. One is fighting to keep it real and show India as is, and not apologize for it, not gloss over it, and show people that can look good too. Which is the first film, which was done out of London.
This
by
idea
a gang.
actually, it was done out of London office. We helped them with, I think, just the music bit actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so have a look at that, and then we'll show you what we did to it afterwards.
Go straight.
What was really cool though was when we'd done the track, because Sunil and I were panicking because the client wasn't approving anything, and there were some friends of his who have this kind of great electronic band, and they'd mixed it for us specially. And when we heard it, we said, damn, this is going to be big as a track. So we took it and we made a music video and asked Nokia, we said it's going to be subliminal advertising, there'll be no branding in it, but it's going to have navigator images. And we also put in a massive amount of texture of Delhi and Bombay and kind of urban life in India for
also these guys, so they're like really good underground kind of DJ set. And they started playing this track all over the world, and the music label was like, my God, we want to buy this. So this is going to be on the new album which is coming up next year.
Yeah.
And we had to deal with VH1, and they ran it, I think it was number 4 on the charts that month.
So I mean, a great example of how if sort of everybody sees it the right way, you can spin advertising into popular culture very easily and sort of, add something. Have a look. It's a little long, so we're going to kind of taper it off in the middle because we are overrunning. And that's all. Thank you. If any of you visit Delhi, please do come and see us or visit our blog and mail us before you come. It'll be great to see anyone and everyone. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.